Mark Rogers TV with college football analysis for the smart fan. That would be you. We're talking some Missouri football this afternoon with Brendan Anthony. You can catch him on the Mazad podcast. Brendan, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing just fine. Thanks for joining us for the very first time to talk some Missouri football. We've been a little void of Tigers football coverage, so very happy to have you on. And of course, National Signing Day just concluded last Wednesday. We had about 75 to 80% of the players nationally signed during the early signing period, but still some key pieces out there left to be signed until last Wednesday. 12th rated class in the SEC, 41st according to 247 Sports. You've got 5 enrollees already on campus. Your thoughts about the class?
Well, as far as where we're rated in the conference and nationally, we're not too surprised as where we've been the last few years, certainly under Barry Odom. This is his third year as head coach and his third year recruiting a class to Mizzou. And, it's interesting being at the bottom of the SEC where we've been in recruiting. It doesn't necessarily often mean that we're in the bottom of the nation. And you can be number 12 in the SEC and sometimes be in the top 25, it seems like. But, it's a very ho-hum class. I think most people would agree with that. It's all 3-star kids, no 4 stars, no 5 stars. I think the biggest talking point about this class for Missouri fans is it was one of the better years for in-state recruits. We had about 10, we called them the Show Me 10, these players that were notable and 4 5-star students who would look to change the course of recruiting at Mizzou. And Missouri recruited them hard, and they publicly did so. And in the end of the day, they only got one of those top 10 kids to come to Mizzou and relied on the majority of the class coming from out of state, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a kind of a bad look for the program to put so much effort and not be able to keep the borders closed, so to speak. And so that's a big discussion point for this particular class, given that there were so many good in-state students and we weren't able to get it done there. But at the same time, Missouri has had mediocre recruiting for years and has made lemonade out of lemons, essentially. So, it's kind of par for the course for us. We'd like to see better in-state recruiting, and we'd like to really see sort of Barry Odom develop as a recruiter. But we'll see what comes of it. We did recruit in the places that we had the most dire need, so we filled a lot of good holes, but we're going to see what happens.
And for those of you out there that may have missed your geography lesson in grade school, Missouri is the Show Me state, so thus the Show Me 10.
That's right.
And I was going to go in that direction, Brendan, in regards to the footprint recruiting-wise of this program, because you're in an interesting situation playing in the SEC, obviously coming over from the Big 12 in 2012. And it's been a bumpy ride. There's been some really good highs, obviously, with winning 2 division championships and then also having some pretty abysmal seasons. But Barry Odom has turned it around, I think, quicker than many of us had thought it was possible. Just your thoughts about where these players need to come from, because you mentioned a very consistent class in regards to all those 3 stars, but you typically need some of those really superior impact players typically to compete with the Georgias and what is typically a Florida, Tennessee type roster.
Yeah, so historically during the Gary Pinkel era, Missouri would get those sort of players that would make that kind of impact from Texas. He had good inroads in Texas, and as you know, Florida, California, Texas are they just put out more football talent than those in-state schools can even deal with, and so there's always players to be had from those areas. And Barry Odom has kept the Texas pipeline alive, and really that has salvaged this recruiting class since we didn't get this sort of in-state talent. One thing that we've been looking for is help in the safety position. Our defense has been suspect the last couple of years, so we've kind of filled those gaps in where recruiting has fallen down with JUCO transfers. We just got a student out of University of Oregon. He's the son of one of our safety's head coach, and Alex Ofidal, and he will fill that safety position. We had our senior safety depart. So, Drew Lock is coming back this year for his senior season, and he's going to need guys to throw it to. Our number 1 receiver, Jamon Moore, he graduated this year as well, and so we're going to have Drew Lock to put up gaudy numbers on the offense, but he's going to need somebody to throw it to. So while Barry Odom has not done anything flashy, and while he's not necessarily gotten any headline recruits, he's certainly filled gaps where the team needed it, as opposed to getting guys that are individual stars.
So back to the three-star narrative. Most fans can typically look at their team's 22 commits, let's say, and lock in on the 4 4 stars and say, well, those are the guys we're excited about because they've got one more star next to their name. It may not play out that way 2 or 3 years down the road. But since all these 3 stars come into the fold, any particular guys that you're excited about, whether it be because of a positional need, as you mentioned there, or just something jumps off the tape or things that you've heard, maybe a guy was undervalued?
Well, that's tough to say. That's the thing about 3-star players, is that nothing does particularly jump out at you. Um, there are a lot of guys, and this kind of question, it leads me to an interview we did on our show with one of our early season rivals, I think Eastern Michigan, and talked about how they recruited, and they get a lot of guys 2-star, 1-star, and sometimes 3-star players, and yet they still put guys in the NFL. And the way he described it to me, and I think this correlates to Missouri's situation, is that you get a 5-star player. Not only do you're probably going to get a star player, but you're probably going to get somebody who can contribute right away. When you're working with 3-star players, you get guys who could end up being star players and who could contribute soon, but you just don't know which one it's going to be and which one is going to sort of fizzle out. It's more of a crapshoot. And, I honestly, at this stage, just a little bit after National Signing Day, I would hedge just saying any one individual is going to be that guy who's going to be a standout. Look at Charles Harris. Charles Harris was not on anybody's radar for Missouri, and now he's playing in the NFL and had a fantastic career in the SEC. Who's going to be the next Charles Harris? I think it would be a fool's errand to make that guess, but it will be somebody, and Missouri's got an excellent track record of turning guys from unheralded recruits into potential draft picks.
Mark Rogers TV with college football analysis for the smart fan. We bring on the best bloggers and broadcasters across the nation in the industry, 97 of them in 2017. Brendan Anthony joins us for the first time talking Missouri football. You can catch him on the Mazad podcast. So I'll let you know first and foremost, subscribe to my YouTube channel for, again, the very best in college football analysis. The audio versions on iTunes, Podbean, and Stitcher. Brendan, where can we catch your work?
Yeah, so the Mazadcast is in a very similar location. Well, of course, you can get us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, basically any place that people are accustomed to getting their podcasts. So, if you know how to get a podcast, you know how to find us. It's Mazadcast, Mizzodcast. But other than that, you'll find it. Or on Twitter.